If I could get all my council people up, please. Councilmember Cunningham, I can see you. Council stand in session. Let's go to roll call.
Ms. Romero? Mr. Cunningham? Mr. Durham?
Here.
Mrs. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Fimbres?
He's absent this evening.
Mr. Kozaczyk? Mayor Rothschild.
Here. Item 2.
Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
The invocation will be given by Imam Saifullah Mohammed from the Islamic Center of Tucson. After the invocation, I ask that you remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
In the name of God, the all-compassionate, the all-merciful, respected council members and community of Tucson, good morning, good evening, actually. On behalf of the Islamic Center of Tucson and the Muslim community, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to come here and be part of this tremendous and important occasion. This occasion reminds me of a saying that we have in our tradition that everyone is a shepherd and every shepherd is responsible for their flock, meaning the people that they're in charge of. So we pray that God allows us to come together for the good of this community and the embetterment of the society, and we pray that this this coming together in this occasion is a fruitful one and that we reap the benefits from it. I mean, thank you.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to proclaim November 22nd to be YMCA Community Military Celebration Day. Michael Rousseau and Curtis Dawson, I believe, are here to accept the proclamation. If you gentlemen would come up to the microphone. Yeah. Gentlemen. I guess these guys will tell you a little more, but this is a tradition that's been started over the last couple years, and actually, in the Wise case, over 150 years, to support and celebrate our military and our community. And here in Pima County with our YMCA, there is a celebration day which will have a banquet and really give honor to some folks that deserve it. So this is a proclamation from the City of Tucson, Office of the Mayor, whereas the YMCA has provided support and service to members of the United States Armed Forces and their families for more than 150 years. And whereas there are many families in Pima County with members who have served in the Arizona National Guard and Reserves, and the YMCA in Southern Arizona is hosting a YMCA Community Military Celebration to celebrate and honor Southern Arizona National Guard and Reserve units, their families and employers on November 22nd, 2019 at the Morris Air National Guard Base. And whereas the proceeds of the event will be utilized entirely to enhance, extend, and expand access for military families to YMCA facilities, programs, and services at branches throughout our community. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan Rothschild, Mayor of the City of Tucson, do hereby proclaim November 22nd, 2019, coming right up, to be YMCA Community Military Celebration Day in this community and encourage all of our residents to support our Arizona National Guard Reserves, their families and employers, and all of our active military. In witness whereof, I've put my hand and seal this 19th day of November, 2019. Jonathan Rothschild, Mayor. Thanks for doing it, guys. Congratulations. And if somebody wants to say a word.
Just want to thank the Mayor and Council. The YMCA has obviously been serving the military since dating back to the Civil War. We do a few different programs now than we did then, obviously, but we know that when someone chooses to serve, the family serves as well. And the YMCA is here to support those families, whether it be through Triangle Y Ranch Camp or through swim lessons on base or whatever it may be, just providing them a place where they can get comfort, support, and maybe a workout too. So thank you so much for recognizing this.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Michael. All right, item 2D.
Appointments to boards, committees, and commissions. Report from City Manager.
City Manager's communication number 377, dated November 19, is received and made part of the record. May I have a motion to approve the appointments in the report?
I move we approve the appointment of Christopher Doman to the El Presidio Historic Zone Advisory Board.
Got a motion and a second. Any chance Mr. Doman present here tonight? He may not be here, but I want to thank him and all other folks who come forward and serve on these voluntary citizens committees. They help us a great deal in making decisions that are important to the community. And I thank him and all of you for your willingness to serve. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Are there any personal appointments to be made at this time? Hearing none, let's move on to item 3.
Mayor and council report, summary of current events.
City Manager's communication number 378, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow members of the mayor and council to report on current events. Does any council member have anything to report at this time? Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am actually very lucky to join you this Thursday, November 21st at 10 a.m. For a tree planting celebration. Trees for Tucson is a program that was established in 1989 to address the need for a healthy, robust urban forest in our desert community. Since its inception, Trees for Tucson has provided over 180,000 low-cost shade trees to homeowners, schools, and community projects. This unique program helps reduce the heat island effect, promotes water and energy savings, and educates the community. This event will be Thursday, November 21st at 10 a.m., located at Davis Bilingual Magnet Elementary School, located at 500 West St. Mary's Road. Contact Katie Gannon at 837-6833 for additional information. I'm going to be very lucky to spend that time with our current mayor that has promoted planting trees in our community, and hopefully I can continue with that project. Also, El Tour de Tucson is held annually the Saturday before Thanksgiving. El Tour is a fundraising ride attracting more than 9,000 cyclists across the world. It is known throughout the world in the United States, and it brings attention to the city of Tucson and what a wonderful community we are for cyclists throughout the world. The tour is happening this Saturday on November 23rd from 6:30 in the morning to 7 p.m. at night, which finalizes the tour with the tour fiesta. The starting ceremony is at Armory Park, located at 221 South 6th Avenue. If you have any questions, we will be announcing street closures and how that's going to work and how traffic is going to move. I know people are always very interested in the route and what streets will be closed. You can always call Perimeter Bicycling Association of America at 745-2033 for additional information.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about was Chuck Ford. Chuck Ford served ably for the residents of Ward 4 from 1979 to 1987. He was a trailblazer, like a lot of people in our community. I shared meals with him. You never know. You'd run into him at IHOP on usually on Grant and Craycroft. I don't know what he'd be doing driving over there, but it was usually on his way to a golf game. He was a great golfer. And he loved Tucson. He loved the community. I remember when Lakeside Park was named for him, it was aptly named because he fought for parks and youth sports every year. Amazingly enough, Jesse Owens passed away here in Tucson. Jesse Owens was a 4-time Olympic medalist and passed away here in Tucson. I want to say 1979 or 1980. And at the time, Pantano Park was in Ward 4. And Chuck Ford got that park to be renamed Jesse Owens Park. I remember a year and a half ago when we rededicated Jesse Owens Park, Chuck Ford was overjoyed. It wasn't a matter of him to get recognition. He kind of didn't even ask for it, but he was deserving of it all the same. And much of the East Side Park system is due to Chuck's advocacy. So I wanted to have the council, on behalf of the council, extend our sincere condolences to his widow, Doris a wonderful force in this community in her own right. The second thing I wanted to talk about, on a point of preference privilege, I also wanted to congratulate the Gridley boys cross-country team because they took the state championship and they represented middle school. It's nice to see a middle school from Tucson win a state championship. It doesn't happen very often, so congratulations to the Gridley Middle School boys cross-country team for taking state from Ward 2. So good job. Lastly, I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize our Ward 4 council person and our mayor. This is the last meeting that they preside over. That is the last meeting the mayor presides over, and the last meeting for Councilmember Scott, who served for 24 years. It's an amazing, they've been amazing examples of public service on a personal and profound level to the city of Tucson. Their love for this community is unquestionable and without contestation. And it's been an honor to serve with both of you. I can't even tell you the number of things that you've done every year, every day, every week, one smile at a time in Tucson. That's how we do it. And the two of you have really put us where we are. You know, it's almost ironic that today we have a budget meeting and we find out we're $17 million ahead, because I remember my first day on the council when we were $68 million in the red. So to come to this point is special, and this community will look at both of your legacies as with joy and excellence, because you guys both of you have served the community with honor and distinction, and I thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
You can do a round of applause on that one.
Councilmember Scott?
I just wanted to take this moment to thank the public and those who've been my supporters and those who were not for the many years of service that I was honored to serve as the Ward 4 council member. It has been a great pleasure to be on this council for 24 years and to see the positive things and changes that have happened in the city of Tucson. And I just wanted to take this moment to thank all of you for your participation and your interest and your support. Thank you.
So I'm going to be absent on inauguration day, and so this will be my opportunity to thank both of you. Shirley, I was in elementary school when you started up the council. Between the two of you, over 3 decades worth of public service, people see us doing this stuff up here. What you don't see is the work that is done behind the scenes. And I know that there's just a ton of hours put in, a lot of meetings, a lot of late night conversations, weekends, and you've been doing that, both of you, with yeoman's efforts for so long. And so I just want to thank you for the examples you've set in public service for this community, and for people who maybe, and I see a lot of young people in the audience who may be considering getting into public service. These two are examples of the way it's done right. So thank you for what you've done for this community.
Thank you. So I'm going to break my tradition. I never say anything during this part of the meeting, but tonight it's my last council meeting as mayor, so I will. And again, I'd like to thank my colleagues on the council for their service and indulgence. Particular shout out to Shirley Scott. 24 years is unimaginable to me, but she did it and did it always with grace. I also would like to thank City Manager Mike Ortega, City Attorney Mike Rankin, City Clerk Roger Randolph, and I can tell you they exemplify the best in public service. As an attorney myself, I have to especially recognize Mike Rankin. This city could not have better legal counsel or representation. I'd like to thank my staff over the years. I think we've accomplished a lot. And of course, I want to thank all the department heads and their staff for what I've seen done here over the last 8 years. That staff is consistently professional. They have a really tough job. weighing between electeds and constituents and heads, and they're professionals, and their recommendations weigh heavily with us, as they should, as elected officials. Government is not unbreakable, and we've seen several recent propositions which could have crippled this city's ability in a number of ways. Government depends on people making good decisions at all levels, decisions which are not always obvious or easy or popular. Attracting and retaining a dedicated professional staff is an absolute necessity to reach good decisions and to avoid unintended, potentially disastrous consequences. And this is why the attack on the integrity of distinguished public servants, as is happening in Washington today, is so damaging to our country. I've been honored, and I've said this, I think, several times, but I'll say it here again tonight. To serve as mayor of this community has been the privilege of my lifetime. There's no better political job in America. Every mayor will tell you that. And I wish all of you who are remaining on the council, I know you're going to continue to do a great job. I especially want to give my best wishes to Mayor-elect Romero. She can take this city to even another level of excellence, and I'm looking forward to watching it from a few blocks away. But anyway, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you. Item 4.
City Manager's Report, Summary of Current Events.
City Manager's Communication number 379, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow the City Manager to report on current events.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, two quick things. One, as you were noticed during the study session by CFO Joe Scarlin, our rating, our outlook from Fitch for the general fund and general obligation bonds, as well as the COPs, certificates of participation, went from stable to positive. That's a huge lift, if you will, that occurred, and it's through your leadership. I wanted to say thank you for that. Second, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Scott, on behalf of the employees of the City of Tucson, I wanted to thank you for your leadership. I wanted to say thanks for the guidance that you provided over the years, and we wish you well in your next and future endeavors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Item 5.
Liquor License Applications Report from City Manager.
City Manager's Communication number 380, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, please read the liquor license agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's liquor license agenda, under item 5B, we have 2 requests for new license. We also have 2 requests for person transfer. Under item 5C, we have 6 requests for special events. Staff has indicated that all the applicants are in compliance with city requirements. An appropriate motion would be to forward items 5B 1 through 4 and C 1 through 6 to the State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item 6.
Call to the audience.
At this time, any member of the public is allowed to address the mayor and council on any issue. Please make sure you've read the information on the back of the speaker's card before making your presentation. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Call to the audience will last no longer than 30 minutes. Pursuant to the Arizona Open Meeting Law, individual council members may ask the city manager to review a matter, ask the matter to be placed on a future agenda, or respond to criticism made by speakers. However, the mayor and council may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during call to the audience. Take a look at the number of what we got here tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4. So we've got a few cards that seem to be here on one particular topic. We'll save them to the end to see if we have time for them. But before we do that, we will go ahead and take some others. We'll start with Jeffrey Calabrese.
Mayor-elect, it's synchronicity, according to Carl Jung, because one of my topics is your TREAP campaign slogan. So all the things I'm going to read to you came off of your website, voteyou.com. And I have answers from Wikipedia, I have answers from Google Scholar, and I have answers of my own. So I was dared to study climate change and I said, you know what, I really want the answers for myself, and I was led to Google Scholar by a Himmel Park librarian. And I just started going where the facts led. I didn't have a conclusion and I wanted to fill in. I said, you know, where's the data going to give me? And here we go. One of your things is that you call climate change basic science. Well, as elementary facts, you could have listed that since the Industrial Revolution, which was recognized at 1760s, that's 260 years, that our carbon particle parts per million have gone up from 280 to 415. You want to aggressively combat climate change, yet you do not mention carbon capture and storage. You want to act boldly on climate change promoting sustainability. Acting boldly is explaining the basic science to your constituents and the citizens. Sustainability is an actual term nobody knows the meaning. I'd like for your definition. Climate change, career path, a climate mitigation career path for students, and all I can say is while driving. I don't understand how you have mitigation and driving in the same sentence. You don't. And trees, boy, and this is where I'm really happy. Because one is I want to bring up that you voted twice that I've been here to wreck the Benedictine. And there's an orchard there. And that you have a thing that you want to plant 1 million trees by 2030. How are you going to irrigate them? And how much fossil fuel consumption? Besides, you must be aware that Governor Doug Ducey has reduced our allotment of Colorado River portion. And by the way, your 1 million trees is called Mount Lemmon. The heat island effect. Every vote you have taken to build construction is a heat island. You had 2 opportunities to vote against this with the Benedictine. Calling it infill doesn't make it right. You have a pledge to launch carbon neutrality. Again, another time that needs to be defined for us. You want to develop local alternatives to recycling, yet Tucson has cut the budget for that. You want to harvest rain and floodwater. I don't know how those 2 things are in a desert. You know, the definition of climate resilience is heavily debated with conceptual and practical terms, in conceptual and practical terms. Nobody knows what that word means either. In my years, you know, I don't even think I'm going to finish that. I think the word climate resilience is something you should go to Google Scholar for your constituents. I'm sure one of your aides could have put up links. If that is the basic science of mayor-elect, give it to the people. Thank you.
Michael Cajero.
Hello. I live at 2740 East 6th Street, and that's located in Sam Hughes, and things are getting more crowded in Sam Hughes. There's more cars that are coming in there, and they've been fiddling around with my street. A lot of cars are getting backed up, and they're producing a lot of carbon and a lot of fumes and a lot of, you know, stuff I don't want to breathe. There's a lot of noise and everything. So, you know, I agree with what my friend said. He's got the science down, I have to admit. And I've been reading about it myself, and it's not good. It doesn't look good. But sustainability and building these parking towers is not a good idea. The parking towers are, I see the one over at the Mark, and I see the cars, you know, and I see that's the future right there. It is so god-awful ugly. It's ugly, ugly, ugly. And it's the same thing that happened to 6th Street with the university. That architecture is junk along the university. It's terrible. And it's just, and then now they built a big parking tower nearby, another one. There are about 12 parking towers in the University of Arizona or related to the university. I mean, I think that's the fact. I don't know, maybe somebody else can verify that. But in the past 10 years, they've been leapfrogging, and it's very difficult to combat heat death here in Tucson when you're building all these towers. They're not, you have to rethink that. The business community has to rethink it. The University of Arizona has to rethink it. Everybody has to, you know, start opening up those books that are being printed, you know, the terrible books, worse than the inconvenient truth. I just, I think it's just terrible what's going to happen to Tucson. I don't see a future in Tucson. What the heck?
You're fine. You have another 35 seconds.
Everything that my friend said is what I go by. I tend to think he's right. And I think we're in for, you know, 120 degrees. Is that about right? Maybe 125 in 3 years. I mean, that's really, what is this, Iraq or something? Are we, you know, this is what's happening. We're become Iraqicized, you know. We're turning into the Middle East, into this, you know, desert stuff, building the walls and all that. I mean, those walls are not, you know, I expect the worst. Thank you.
That's the real marker. Thank you. Mark Eberlein?
Mark Eberlein, 928 South 7th Avenue. That's Barrio Santa Rosa down here by 5 Points. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your service to the city. I'm here with a very specific request tonight. There's a complex issue of homelessness. Many are veterans. It's my understanding that all the beds are full in Tucson tonight. As we leave tonight, if you came in early, you might not have seen folks that are right outside our door sheltering. There are signs and a policy. Santa Rosa Park is closed at 10. There will be people sleeping under the picnic tables there tonight. Some of them will have blankets that are soaking wet by morning. But I'm here to ask you to find a way to leave the toilets unlocked overnight. Policy right now locks the toilets up every night, but the reality is there are people there, whether there's a policy against it or not, whether there's a sign that says the park is closed or not. And when they have nowhere else to urinate or defecate, they do it on the side of the toilet. Is that the image of Tucson that we want? I'm asking you to find a way to leave the toilets unlocked. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Brent Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Brent Davis. My address is 660 South Country Club Road here in Tucson. First of all, I want to congratulate all the winners of the election and look forward to your assumption of office here in another week or so. Regina Romero, congratulations on becoming mayor. Paul Cunningham on re-election. That's a hard ward to represent, but I hear you're the second best council member that's ever been out there. And Lane Santa Cruz and Nikki Lee, who I look forward to working with. Second thing I wanted to say, Paul Cunningham, thank you for your tribute to Chuck Ford. I had the honor of sitting by his side for 8 years up there, and he was a great friend, and we're going to miss him. And then finally, thank you, Councilmember Scott, for your 24 years. That's great. And you know I love you, Shirley. Mr. Mayor, I don't love you, but I like you a lot, and you did a great job in 8 years, too, so thank you very much. Okay, so why am I here? I want to talk about item number 9, which is not a public hearing. As you know, that's a rezoning by the request by the Arizona State Land Department, and I represent the Billboard Review Committee. There are 2 billboards whose continuance there has caused a great deal of heartburn for a number of us. And I'm happy to say, after meeting with Mike Rankin, who I thank for all his return phone calls, and Carrie Sylvan for her efforts in the Arizona State Land Department, Mark Mayer from the Billboard Review Committee and the committee itself, we're here to say we endorse the language as being presented tonight on those billboards. And that's what my statement is, and we hope that you'll proceed with that.
All right, thank you, Brent, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sheila Wilson.
Yes, my name is Sheila Wilson, and my mailing address is P.O. Box 12934, Tucson, Arizona 85732. I am a homeowner in Rita Ranch with the state land behind me, and I'm going to read my statement because of the time limit to speak. A few months ago, I found out that there are several feet behind my block wall where the state land begins. I do not know how many feet because I have not paid for a very expensive survey. I want to thank the entire team working on this project for offering a very viable solution for me and all the other homeowners dealing with the same issue. The offer is to give us a letter before the builder builds their block wall, allowing the homeowners to connect to the builder's block wall. This will allow the property in question to be enclosed with barriers on each side. Unfortunately, some of the homeowners have decided to wait until the builder places their block wall and then ask the builder for a better offer, such as to pay for their barriers, connect to the builder's wall without permission, or to leave one each in between the wall and the builder's wall and still have no permission. This is a very unfortunate situation that the homeowners have decided to behave in this manner, especially since we have been offered a very viable solution. Again, I want to thank the entire team for working with me. Carrie, the attorney representing the project, Linda from the Planning Center, Sam Mills representing the state, and Mark Elderman representing Pulte Homes. I also want to thank Stephanie at the Planning Center for always being present and helping me every time I phoned Lexi, I'm giving a special thanks to Lexi at the Planning Center for always taking the time to speak to me, being so informative, and finding out all of the answers to my questions. I dealt with Lexi the most about this project and my entire feet issue behind my home. She always made me feel like my questions were important and deserved answers. She was always pleasant, helpful, and informative. There was a day back in October that Lexi and I had been playing phone tag all day long. Lexi reached me at almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon, time for her to go home. But no, she still wanted to speak to me and did so with never rushing me or letting me know what a long day I'm sure that she had had. She spoke to me until 5:20 and as usual was so pleasant and helpful. She not only helped me with this project, but told me that if I ever have any questions about any project, to contact her. A special thanks to Lexi and a special thanks to the whole team. I do appreciate everything they've done for me.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Mark Mayer.
Good evening, members of the Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Mark Mayer, and my information is on the card submitted. As with Brent Davis, I'm here on behalf of the Billboard Review Committee, so I'm not going to try and retrace the ground he covered, but just to add a few things. Yes, we are in agreement with the solution that was found in terms of the removal of the billboards as a condition of the Atterbury Trails rezoning. It was not the easiest negotiations, but we were able to successfully resolve it, which is one of the reasons to have a Billboard Review Committee. And I just wanted to touch on what the Billboard Review Committee is, because sometimes we're not in the public eye a whole lot, but it's a 15-member committee that has representation from organizations or individuals that are drawn from neighborhood interests, environmentalists, dark sky advocates, preventionists, and the astronomical observatories. And we're not exactly an advocacy group, but more like a group that is there to assure that the two settlement agreements in Pima County and the city of Tucson are adhered to rigorously, and to make sure codes and policies are followed when they come to billboards. In this particular case, we're talking about a condition in Plan Tucson that billboards are to be removed as a condition of rezoning. That's not just Plan Tucson, but the predecessor plans going all the way back to at least 1998. In this particular particular case, there was no mention in the billboards in the report that went to the zoning examiner, and we had to independently raise that, and then again spent a fair amount of time coming to a good resolution on it, or at least one that's acceptable for us. So we withdraw any objection to the rezoning going forward. I did want to mention one other thing. I'm authorized, one of our members on the Billboard Review Committee is a member of the Sierra Club and could not come tonight, but they had submitted a letter to you in regard to the rezoning, and have since submitted an email where they wanted very strict adherence to that condition, to see more immediate removal of the billboards, but they are deferring to the Billboard Review Committee and the solution that we've been able to reach with Arizona State Land Department. So I hope things go through when you get to your agenda item, and I'd also want to thank Mayor Rothschild and Councilmember Scott for their service, and I think with this particular issue, it's a nice way to, it's kind of been a burr in the saddle for some 7 years at least now, and to get it resolved and not have it carry over to the new council, I think is a good thing, and good luck on your future endeavors after you return to private life. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Okay, we have 4 cards left. They seem to be on similar subjects. Let's see, it's 6:09. We have 14 minutes. They should be able to get it in. We'll keep them to their 3 minutes each. We'll start with Elliot Glicksman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, I want to thank you all for your service, especially Mayor Rothschild and Councilperson Scott for all of your years of service. I am here. I live in, my name's Elliot Glicksman. I live in Catalina Vista neighborhood. I'm not here on behalf of the HSL Properties Tucson Jazz Festival, which runs January 10th through the 20th, with information at tucsonjazzfestival.org. I know that Mayor Rothschild would not give Mayor-elect Romero any advice on how to do the job. He would find it presumptuous. He would find it inappropriate. However, I've been watching Mayor Rothschild for 8 years, and based on my observations on his 8 years of service, I think I can give you the advice that he has learned. First, when you take the oath of office and you are asked, do you swear? The answer is not hell yeah like a drunken sailor. Second, when a concerned citizen approaches you and wants to ask you about a topic, do you engage him? Do you look him in the eye? No. No, because if you do, they'll start talking about why they don't get cable reception or why the sun rises on the house next door to them. You run like Mel Gibson at a bar mitzvah. You run like Mick Mulvaney from a subpoena, or you run like Steve K when he hears there's a TV crew next door. Third, let's say, again, this is all stuff I've learned from the mayor. Let's say you get really drunk and you can't find your car. You get really drunk, let's say, after a council meeting or before. TPD will find your car for free. They'll send everyone out to look for your car. You just have to tell them you were carjacked. Of course, they'll never find the person who took your car. Finally, and I do have to tell you, I do think you screwed up already. You should not call the people who voted for you stupid. And I heard you on election night saying you carried the areas where Tucson's population was very dense. I want to point out the mayor's been away for a while. He hasn't. I wanted you to point out that's Karen. That's your wife.
The wife is
no, the one with the scarf.
Oh, okay.
The one with the scarf. Anyway, again, I want to thank my friend Jonathan and this council helping homeless vets, instilling trust in government, getting dropouts back in school, and supporting the Tucson Jazz Festival, which runs January 10th through the 20th, and you can get information at tucsonjazzfestival.org. Thank you.
Yay, Elliot. It could only get better from here. Eric Erickson? He's fine.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here because the article in the paper last week on Jonathan Rothschild, he very graciously called out the poker group that he has been playing cards with for years, and I am part of that poker group. I am one of the old lawyers that we talked about. Some of the other old lawyers are here too. These are the ones that could find this place. And we have been playing poker with Jonathan Rothschild since we were young lawyers. And when he announced that he was going to be mayor, well, obviously we all voted for him. And when he was inaugurated, remember these? When he was inaugurated December 5, 2011, we all knew that he was going to be the extraordinary, exemplary mayor that he has become. So we want to express our appreciation for that. I was, he doesn't know this, but we had a pool among the poker group. And I got to tell you, Jonathan, nobody thought you'd go 6.5 years before you dropped the F-bomb. You could be
7 years, 9 months, Eric.
Yeah, well. Also, there are a couple of, there's at least one picture that I noticed here that there is a official portraits of the mayor, and they're all very nice, but I got one that I think is really much better. And with your permission, I'd like to pass it around, if I may.
If you could hand that to the clerk, that would be helpful.
That's, I got some other ones here too. These are really good. But I'm not going to do that.
It's okay, Eric. You're doing just fine.
Anyway, congratulations on 2 successful terms, and we look forward to having you back playing poker, and we hope that maybe you can buy more than 1 pizza for 8 guys next time.
Okay, I'll do my best. All right, thank you, Eric. They've still got a few minutes, unfortunately. Tony Fines.
Mayor and Council, my name is Tony Fines. I live at 2625 East Mabel, and I'm one of the poker boys, one of the older lawyers. I'm one of the ones who's retired, and it's hard to follow Elliot and Eric, but I'm wishing you the best, and I hope when you play poker in the future, it's not only 1 pizza for 8 people, but you order it before we get there. And thank you.
Tony, you're so kind. Just for the audience's knowledge, he seems like a very kind man. His nickname is the Assassin. We have one more card here. We'll give it a try. David Fitzsimmons, representing not the Arizona Daily Star.
Well, I hope you'll forgive me. I'm not accustomed to public speaking. So I brought notes with me. I made extensive notes during your meeting. I'm Dave Fitzsimmons. I am the producer of the Arroyo Cafe Holiday Radio Show, and I'm a resident of Pima County, but I'm here because what benefits the city benefits the county, which quite often is never the reverse. First, I want to praise Councilwoman Scott on her tenure, but also express my disappointment in your exemplary service because it's contrary to my interest as a cartoonist, because I often thought you'd be a kick to draw. And I think I have watched you ever since you got the potholes patched in the Butterfield stage route. So awesome. I also want to point out, if you want to know how long 24 years of service is, I am 24 years old. The second issue I want to address is much more important and much more serious. It involves allegations of a phone call overheard at a la carte where my name was mentioned and someone overheard the following: "The mayor loves your beep." Well, this created quite a concern to me because I had been texting both mayors asking me if they'd be in my show, and yes, I did use the phrase, "Would you do me a favor, though?" And It appears as though I'm in the middle of an embarrassing ethical issue as a journalist, in air quotes, and it all goes back to I've ignored the mayor's outbursts and his foul, filthy language, and in fact, I'm afraid right now as a journalist that chair is the mayor's throwing chair that he throws when he's enraged at a local journalist. Well, as I noted, I asked both mayors that they be in my show, and there was some conversation. And here, I have to say this. Mayor Rothschild and Mayor Romero are the greatest living mayors ever to govern Southern Arizona. And that's the last time I will ever say that. There was no quid pro quo.
That will bring to a conclusion call to the audience for this evening. Thank goodness.
Your Honor, please remind everybody to tip their waitresses.
Item 7.
Consent agenda items A through I.
Reports from the city manager on the consent agenda are received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read the consent agenda.
Your Honor, on this evening's consent agenda, item A is approval of minutes. Item B is an intergovernmental agreement with Pima County for the 2019 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program Award. Item C is Parks and Recreation, renaming Sears Park to Loma Verde Park. Item D is Parks and Recreation, naming the Lincoln Regional Park softball fields 5 through 8, the Julie Raton Softball Complex. This item will be considered separately at the request of Councilmember Cunningham. Item E is Parks and Recreation, development and maintenance agreement with Intermountain Centers for Human Development Incorporated for a new park near 401 North Bonita. Item F is grant applications to the Federal Transit Administration for urbanized area formula funds, buses and bus facilities, surface transportation program funds, and lower no emission grant program funds. Item G is a final plat S19050 Savano 2 Block 1, lots 1 through 18 in Common Area A. Item H is a final plat S18062 Broadway Place, blocks 1, 2, and 3. Item I is Parks and Recreation Improvement and Maintenance Agreement with the Salvador Initiative LLC for the Garden of Gethsemane. This item has been continued at the request of staff. That's the extent of the consent agenda, Your Honor.
Do we have was it item D that was going to be considered separately?
Yes.
Okay.
And item I is continued.
Okay, so why don't we first take the motion to approve items A, B, C, E, F, G, and H. Can I have that motion?
Yes, Your Honor, that motion is moved.
A motion is second to approve those items. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, item D, Councilman Cunningham, I think you pulled.
Your Honor, before we make the formal motion on item D, I thought it would be appropriate to ask Coach Candrea. Coach Candrea is the head coach of the University of Arizona softball team. He's also the former head coach of the United States of America gold medalist softball team. He's probably as close to a living legend in Tucson, Arizona as you can get. So, Coach, I thought it'd be appropriate for you to come on up and say a few words about renaming the softball complex.
All right. Quite a humorous place. Didn't realize that. But thank you for allowing me an opportunity on behalf of Mark and Elaine Raytan, Julie's mom and dad, just to give you a little idea how special this young lady was. She played for me in 1997 in the national championship game and was gone in June to diabetes. And just a tremendous young lady, a 4.0 student, had tremendous balance in her life, and her goal was really to start an orphanage when she got finished with college, and never got to see that through, but her mom and dad have done that, and they have helped over 100 kids to see college in Africa. And this is a very special family. The fields were named after Julie, fields 1 through 4, I think, and we just feel that it was only appropriate that we continue to name the rest of the complex in her name, because she is a very special Tucsonian, Saguaro High School graduate, and a young lady that dearly made a big impression in my life, and I just think it's great that we're thinking about doing this.
Great. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. Are Julie's parents here?
I would remind you, Mike, that you commented on the humorous nature. That's not normal.
Are her parents here? No. Okay. I just wanted to say with Coach's words, thank you, Coach, for coming tonight. And with that, I'd like to move formally that we rename the Golf Links softball complex to the Julie Rattan softball complex.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that matter? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. 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 Anyone opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Coach, for coming in. All right.
Coach.
All right. Let's move on to item 8.
Zoning C91913, Escalera Pad RX1 to Pad 38, City Manager's Report, Ordinance Adoption, Report from City Manager, Ordinance number 11712.
City Manager's Communication number 386, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. This is a request to rezone approximately 344.3 acres from RX1 to PAD zoning. The site is located on the southwest corner of Valencia Road and Houghton Road. The zoning examiner and staff recommended approval of PAD zoning and adoption of the ordinance which provides conditions for the rezoning. Is there an applicant or representative present?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Linda Morales with the Planning Center to East Congress here in Tucson.
Okay.
And we're representing Arizona State Land Department.
Is your client agreeable to the proposed requirements?
Yes, everything in the PAD is, there aren't conditions because they're written into the PAD.
And it's my understanding, in addition to, well, there's two, I think this is the one, we have two amendments to, that's for the second one. Okay, so yours is a straightforward, you don't have the billboards, you don't have the.
No, we don't
gotcha.
have billboards on Sunday.
Okay, so you're good with what's been provided. Okay, Mr. Clerk, you're requested to read ordinance 11712 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11712 relating to zoning, amending zoning district boundaries in the area located at the southwest corner of South Houghton Road and East Valencia Road in case C91913, Escalera Planned Area Development RX1 to Pad 38, and setting an effective date.
What's the council's pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a comment that this Escalera pad is a great example of community working together. I want to thank the State Land Department, Pulte, Linda Morales, Carrie Sylvan, and especially the Rita Ranch Neighborhood Association and Desert Willow Estates Homeowners Association for all of their time, energy, and collaboration. The neighborhood leadership created a lot of positive changes in the pad to improve the future of Southeast Tucson. I thank you to the neighborhoods for speaking in favor of the pad at the zoning examiner's hearing. There was one outstanding concern regarding the trails along both sides of the Atterbury Wash tributaries start dig. The applicant has asked for it to start, these are the trails, when the 800th house is permitted, and the neighborhood is asking for when the 400th house is permitted. Would the applicant oppose meeting in the middle and changing that to when the 600th house is permitted?
Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor Scott, yes, we're amenable to that.
Okay.
If so, okay, thank you. With that, Mr. Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 11712 with the amendment to start the trails along both sides of the Atterbury Wash tributary when the 600th house is permitted.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the pad plus the amendment. Is there any discussion on this particular one? Councilmember Romero.
I just wanted to ask about the treatment for the Atterbury Wash, the gray infrastructure and the natural amenities. So can you give me some responses in terms of how you're going to deal with the washes?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Romero. Yes, the entire PAD was really modeled upon the Houghton Area Master Plan, and the HAMP did have provisions for those wildlife corridors, of which the tributary of the Atterbury Wash that runs through our site is one of those that is preserved on there. So per the plan and per those networks that have been established by that plan, we have set that area aside as completely natural open space. We did have some environmental we had Westland Resources go out and do an environmental survey of that, and there is some buffalo grass in there. There was some question whether it was Tobosa grass. It's not, which is, either way, we were going to preserve it as open space. But yeah, so there weren't any particular and protected species that are different than anything else in that general area. But yeah, either way, it will be preserved. We've tried to minimize the wash crossings. We do have the crossings that are necessary to get back and forth because we don't want the two portions, the east and west portion, to be isolated. So we do have a wash crossing, but again, trying to limit those so that we keep the wash in a natural state. And we have the trails on either side of those, just outside of the riparian area, so that people can enjoy that open space and have the walking opportunities next to it.
Is there a mitigation plan for the construction and the impacts on wildlife?
As far as the mitigation goes, there would be the native plant surveys. We haven't asked for any exceptions to that. So there would still be all of the typical going in and salvaging plants that are viable and replacing those that are cannot be salvaged and are left in place. So outside of the wash where it would be disturbed, we would have that. We do have rainwater harvesting and sustainability policies written into the PAD. And in addition to those, we haven't asked for exemptions from any of the other city ordinances that apply to that apply to the site. Does that, as far as the wildlife mitigation,
yes.
Yeah, that was, so certainly, again, we don't have any particular species that are endangered or threatened on the site that are not, again, typical of the area. As far as when grading goes in, grading won't be done mass graded across the entire site. It would be done, because it is 344 acres, we're going to be doing that on a subdivision by subdivision basis. So we'll go in and grade one portion of the area, and then that will give the wildlife a chance to slowly kind of move out and move into those wildlife corridors. And yes, the wildlife will have to be relocated from the site because it will not continue to be open space, but it will be incremental and move them into those corridors that will eventually move them and connect them with public lands and preserved lands, so that it won't just be like all of a sudden one day everything's run off and they don't have an opportunity to be moved.
As long as you have a mitigation plan for the wildlife on that land, will this pad take into consideration the connections to the existing bike trails and pedestrian access points on Valencia and on Houghton Road?
Absolutely. We have the greenway along Houghton. Our wash trails will connect to both that greenway, will connect from that greenway up to Valencia, and there will be paths along Valencia, but we also are connected to the loop. The loop runs on the west side between our property and the school, and then runs up through Atterbury Trails and on up through, connecting to the rest of Tucson. So we've actually got kind of the local trail that runs along the Atterbury, and then the regional trail that connects to the rest, and all of those will interconnect. One of the other things that came up during the neighborhood meetings was that we were trying to achieve some connectivity between Rita Ranch and those other trails. Our trails, our park area, and Houghton Road. Right now, there are some informal paths that people do take through the site. We were preserving, and in the pad we have identified a few areas along that Rita Ranch boundary. Unfortunately, when Rita Ranch was developed, there wasn't that provision for that future trail access. So we're really confined to, bless you, Councilor Cunningham, we were left with really the wash crossings and the drainage areas where there are breaks in the houses in Rita Ranch and breaks in the walls. They're not ideal, but we would still like to take advantage of those and connect our pedestrian paths so that there is a pedestrian connection from Rita Ranch through our site. So it is as much of a connected neighborhood as possible without street connections and without that plan provision on the other side. But that was a request from the neighbors that they could still get through to the Fry's, get through to Houghton, and the future commercial that we're providing.
So getting through pedestrian and on bicycle.
Yes, okay. where we can fit those trails in, we're going to try to do that on our end. And there were, I think, 4 or 5 spots that we identified in the PAD. There was one other spot that the neighbors that lived around there, the one particular neighbor that lived right on it, asked us to not. So that one was not there, but all the rest of those do provide that. And the school was an important part too, to make sure that we could get back and forth so people didn't have to go all the way out to Valencia on the streets to drive back into the school. So we're going to leave breaks there where we can so people can get through and drop off their kids on the local street inside Escalera and still get to the school. We're making the best of a not so ideal situation on the pedestrian connectivity to other areas.
How will you work with the city to develop a concept plan for the new neighborhood park scheduled in phase 1 of this PAD?
How will we do the park plan?
Yes. How will you work with the community and with the city of Tucson to develop that phase 1?
We do have, there's a couple different things. We have a design review committee that's set up as part of this. So as new developments come in, both those park type of things as well as new subdivisions, new commercial developments, it would go through a design review process prior to it going to the city design review process. So that's one way that the neighborhood can get integrated and involved, because we do have a neighborhood representative on that. And then we'll also, as far as the trails go, those would be public trails. So we'll work with Parks and Rec to make sure that we already have been working with them to get the design and the 12-foot trail with the 8-foot soft trail adjacent to that on the both sides of the wash. That was something that was requested, and we kind of worked back and forth. It actually was called out in the HAMP as a greenway, but the greenway ended up, after the HAMP was adopted, ended up being part of the loop on that west boundary. So we kind of ended up with double trails, and so we compromised and made the Atterbury more of a like neighborhood type of trail, and then the greenway is really that through trail for the regional. So that kind of we'll continue to work with Parks and Rec to make sure that we make sure that works right. As far as the public trail again, or the public park, that would be developed by that time, and triggering that on later on after the number of homes have gone in would give the homeowners themselves, the master association and the homeowners that will be living in Escalera, the chance to have input onto that park as well. So that'll be a good opportunity in the future.
Sorry. And I know that Councilmember Scott's office worked hand in hand with you and the neighbors, and I just want to make sure for the record, if you can describe the meetings that you've had, public process that you've had with the neighbors surrounding the area and the businesses on Houghton Road.
Absolutely. We worked, we started, I believe our first neighborhood meeting was back in April. And we probably had it at the elementary school, and we probably had 50, maybe 60 people in attendance at that meeting. And that was really a listening meeting. It wasn't the official meeting as part of the rezoning process. It was just to get out and hear people's concerns, hear what they were interested in seeing in the plan, and start a dialogue. And it was a really good meeting. I mean, there were some people that were opposed to us, some people that were just there to listen, and some people that were supportive of again, that implementation of the HAMP and doing the next piece along Houghton Road and the neighborhood. And so it gave us a lot of good input into what needed to go into this plan, into our first draft. We went back, we worked with staff, had a couple iterations of the draft plan, and then that was our chance to take that plan back to the neighborhood. And the next time, and in between that, we had just a ton of phone calls, emails, correspondence with a lot of the neighbors. So there was that ongoing dialogue as well. And then when we took it back a few months later, I think it was early summer, we went back and did another meeting, and we had fewer attendees, I think, because there was that communication back and forth. So we were down to maybe 30 people. It was pretty split between people that still had concerns and people that that were very supportive of the project. Again, took input at that meeting too, and it gave us a chance to do a final draft of this where we could work together and come to the zoning examiner with really a great deal of support. A lot of the concern really centered around some misunderstandings of people with Arizona State Land Department feeling that, are believing when they bought their homes that that was permanent natural open space or parks, state parks. So it was a bit of an education process throughout all of those meetings to let people know the purpose of state land and that it was always intended at some point to be sold for future development for the good of the beneficiaries of the trust. So that was really it. And when we got to zoning examiner, I think we only had a handful of people coming out, and some of those, as you heard from Sheila, were very supportive of us.
Okay. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Just a couple.
Councilman Kozaczek?
So this may be more a philosophical question than process, because I really appreciate the process you've gone through. This is state land, and you just said that people were under a misapprehension about what the purpose of state land was. And it is currently zoned RX1, low density.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if we didn't go through with this? The state would continue to own it, and would it speak to that? What would happen in terms of sale, auction of the state land?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kozaczek, if the zoning did not go through at this point, I don't believe the state land would go through with any auction process. They are, and speaking for Mr. Edelman back here, are required to get the best return on that for the trust. And I think because of the direction that the Houghton Area Master Plan put forth, any development less than really what we're proposing in this pad wouldn't be in conformance with that vision that was set forth. I would assume they would hold on to it until a later date where perhaps they could really implement that vision.
So it would continue to be the low-density RX1 zoning that it is right now?
Yeah.
Which would be perhaps consistent with some of the expectations of the surrounding property owners that you heard at some of your public meetings.
Perhaps, yes.
What's the projected timeline for this?
So the Pulte is the permit or applicant on this, or what is the term like I'm struggling with? They would have to go forward with the state land would initiate an auction process, and that would come up. I don't know the timing of that. It would probably be within the next. Do you guys want to do within the next 2 years? I'm going to invite Carrie up because she's been working on the state land component. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mayor, Councilmember Kozaczek, the process is once the zoning is in place, then state land goes through its constitutionally required process for auction, which is relatively old and hasn't been changed. It includes an auction on the courthouse steps and a lot of behind-the-scenes work. It's a couple of years, actually, to get through that process. And then once it's auctioned, they work out the deal points, and then that developer brings forward the development plan or plat in conformance with the pad. So from a time from now until there's the potential for an approved plat and movement is at least 2 years, probably closer to 3 years.
So in the pad, it says our assured water supply letter becomes null and void after 2 years. What happens with that reset if this project doesn't begin for more than 2 years?
So the project it is within Tucson Water, and we just continue to renew that assured water. So we got the Tucson Water guy sitting here shaking his head.
Tim, up, please.
Okay.
Obviously, no development occurs in this county without an assured water supply. How are you going to, 2-3 years from now, how do you assure that condition can continue to be met?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Tucson Water's designation of assured water supply covers our entire service area as approved, including the contiguous city limits. And so it is always typically a 10-year look ahead on any existing demands that we have and any permitted developments. So once we give an assurance, it counts against our assured water supply, and we have to carry that on the books until it either develops or goes away. So it's something that's renewed every 10 years. So it's in perpetuity for when Tucson Water, as long as we keep that renewed.
Yeah, and so when I began to say this is more philosophical than anything else, but our water supply is not good in perpetuity. It's good as long as it's good. And so as I look at the whole east side development, southeast side, I see the low density RX1, and then perhaps more relevant to the next item is this, we're making long-term zoning entitlements, and you're going to be back up here saying, yeah, we still got enough water, and that may be good for 2 or 5 or 10 years, but at some point, we in this community need to be taking a 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 50-year outlook on what's going to happen, and we don't have that crystal ball. I know that the state land department perhaps get this partially wrong, but they have a commitment to Tucson and Phoenix for something like 25,000 acre-feet of water that they've been sitting on and haven't cut loose. Is that a part of this deal too? I think ours is 14,000 acre-feet.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kozaczek, there is 14,000 acre-feet of CAP water entitled to the State Land Department. That is earmarked for Tucson. That is something that can be requested in this process.
Yeah, but we've been requesting that for a long time, and they've been reluctant, or they've refused to cut it loose. So if we're going to do 344 and 2,500 acres, state land has to cut loose with our 14,000 acre-feet of water that is ours for this region.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Kozaczek, the Tucson Water's existing assured water supply has sufficient capacity in it.
I know that, Tim. I'm talking about the 14,000 acre-feet they owe us. We haven't negotiated that with the state land as a part of these two deals?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, Linda, there are 10 archaeological sites within the site perimeter. Have they been overlaid with the proposed site plan to make sure that there's no conflict with the way this development's going to be laid out? There are 21 acres of open space in 344.
Councilmember Kozaczek, we have identified those and have a requirement before grading activities that we'll have to go in and either mitigate for those or set those aside. At this stage on the PAD level, we haven't done the actual mitigation where we dig in and deal with those. It's just what was on the records as far as the State Museum records go. And that's typical of a rezoning level. When you get into the plats and the subdivision plans and the development plans is when you get into those mitigation types of things. And again, we have the property there that if we need to set aside certain areas, those would come during the plat development plan stage.
There will certainly be conflicts that would.
Okay. Councilmember Cunningham?
A few things. First of all, I actually agree philosophically with Steve. I'm in support of this motion, but after the fact, I want to know, is it possible for us to go back to the state and say, hey, look, that 14,000 acre feet of water, that's supposed to be ours, and we, is that possible?
Yeah.
Tim?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's certainly possible to make that ask.
Because I feel that's, besides look, just because we have the water capacity, that's because we have an awesome water department that took care of our water. That isn't anything the state did for us. So now we're gonna build infill, which actually philosophically I agree with. If you look at Tucson from 250,000 feet, you see this hole in the middle between the Rita Ranch area and everything north of Irvington. This fills in that 2-mile hole. It's smart growth. I get that part. And philosophically, I agree with that part. I also agree philosophically, though, that And to go further than that, not only does this help that infill piece, if we don't build homes here, we end up building homes down the Cienegas or something nuts like that where they totally don't belong and they'll dig for water or something. So that would be a bigger disaster. But also philosophically, I agree that if we're entitled to that 14,000 feet and we have leverage to do that, we can't be giving the store away to the state just because. So that's my big thing. I want to make sure we go after it pretty aggressively. The second thing I'll say is that whatever's built according to what the material says, I'm under the understanding that the water will, whatever we build, will grade properly to continue to feed water to the Atterbury Wash. Is that correct?
That's for Linda, I think. Linda, did you hear the question?
Drainage. Well,
Drainage.
I apologize. I was.
Go ahead, Paul, again.
I didn't hear the question.
I just want to make sure, look, everything that's going to get built is going to get built east of Harrison and west of oh, wait a minute. This is the south. This is the Escalera one. It's my fault.
Okay.
Okay, when we get to the next item, I'll talk about that too. But this piece starts that process. And so I agree with this piece because we're filling in a gap that on 4 different sides is already SFR, RAC 5, RAC 6 development. So that piece I agree to. We're talking about 8 and 9
all right,
consecutively. But anyway, that's my input to this specific item. Wait till next item when I bring that up.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on this item? If not, Councilman Scott, did you make a motion?
I think I did.
Yes, sir.
Did we get the second?
I did second this motion.
Okay, we've got a motion second. If there's not any other discussion, let's see what we're making sure we have this on. It's a pass-fail. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
I'm saying yes to this, but I'm going to resume that conversation on the 2,500 acres coming up about that 14,000 acre feet. I understand that this is relatively small infill. That's a different dynamic on the next one.
Okay. Well, and before, as a preface to that, you're done.
I'm done. Thank you.
Quit while you're ahead.
All right.
And we have some state land representatives here tonight, and I think at least Ms. Sylvan knows about this issue. My only kind of comment on it would be that this is going to give us a very active opportunity to work with state land over a number of years. This is the pad, and these things are going to come back in pieces. And I think that's something we're all going to take a very close look at. And I don't think the issue is going to go away. And I just think it will give us the opportunity to have those continuing conversations until we get that resolved. So I don't know. But let's then move on to item 9.
Oh, can we vote on this?
Oh, yeah. Voting on. No, we did. And
Okay.
we voted on. Well, now we'll try item 9. Go ahead.
Zoning C91912 Atterbury Trails PCD SR RX1 MH1 and I2 to PCD. City Manager's Report Ordinance Adoption. Report from City Manager Ordinance Number 11711.
City Manager's communication number 390, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. This is a request to rezone approximately 2,590 acres from SR RX1 MH1 and I2 to PCD zoning. The rezoning site is located roughly between Irvington Road and Valencia Road, west of Houghton Road, and between Poorman Road and Esmond Station Road, east of Houghton Road. The zoning examiner recommends approval of PCD zoning subject to 3 revisions to the PCD document as proposed by the applicant. Staff recommends approval of PCD zoning and adoption of the ordinance provides conditions for the rezoning. The conditions include the 3 revisions recommended by the zoning examiner plus a 4th revision that emerged after the zoning examiner public hearing. Ms. Sylvan, would you like to come forward? Before we get started, and I just want to make sure the record's clear on these revisions. I've got 2 pages that talk about administration, studies required, and the billboard language. I'm not sure if that's all the amendments or if there's more that you need to read into the record too.
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, Carrie Sylvan, 5983 East Grant Road, City of Tucson, representing state land. A number of the revisions that are referenced in the zoning examiner report were put into the document that is part of this record. So there are only really 2 changes that need to be made as part of this, and I know Mr. Rankin also has the language. I'm happy to read them into the record. I'm happy if somebody else wants to.
Mr. Rankin, and I'm not even sure, has everyone on council received these amendments? I know they came in relatively late.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I know that representatives of different interest groups came around and talked with various elected officials about the issues. But as already described, the amendments, the first one relates to the infrastructure and an intergovernmental agreement with Pima County. So I'll just go ahead and read the language at this time. It would be on page 64 of the PCD document in section 4B, which would be revised to say that prior to ASLD, which is Arizona State Land Department, disposition of any land within the PCD, ASLD and the city shall enter into an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, or other acceptable form of agreement that can include Pima County as Pima County desires, and that will establish the shared responsibilities between the governmental entities for studies of water capacity and sewer capacity if Pima County is involved, regional transportation connectivity, and basin drainage floodplain approach for the PCD area. And then a couple of amendments to deal with the billboard issue that's been discussed already. On page 53 of the PCD in section 3C4, the last paragraph would be revised to say that the ASLD SLUPs, which are the state special land use permits, for the existing billboards that are located within Development Area 8, southeast corner of Houghton and Poorman, and Development Area 11, near the northeast corner of Houghton and Valencia, will be canceled at the time of a successful auction for the parcel on which the billboard is located, and in no event later than 3 years from the effective date of this PCD. Upon a successful auction, the developer will be responsible for the billboard removal within 60 days of the auction. If an auction does not occur within 3 years from the effective date of this PCD, ASLD will provide to the city permission to enter upon the subject property through a separate right of entry agreement to be granted within 10 days of the city request for the city's removal of the billboards. ASLD will also provide to the city a copy of this SLUP SLUP notice of cancellation. At the same time, such notice is provided to the SLUP permittee. In no event is ASLD responsible for physical removal of the billboards. And then the last change just references the billboard that is subject to the 2009 settlement agreement, and it'll just correct the removal date as being May 17, 2020, which will be consistent with the settlement agreement. And those references are in section 2B and 3C5 of the PCD.
Okay, I think we've got all the documents in front of us. We have the amendments. Ms. Sylvan, is the applicant agreeable to the proposed requirements?
Yes, the applicant's agreeable with all the changes that were just read.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, you're requested to read ordinance 11711 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11711 relating to zoning, amending zoning district boundaries in the area located between the Harrison Road alignment and Houghton Road, extending from Irvington Road south to Valencia Road and east to Houghton Road, north of Valencia Road and south of Valencia Road to approximately Edmond Station Road in KC 91912 Atterbury Trails Planned Community Development, SR RX1, MH1, and I2 to PCD zone and setting an effective date.
Excuse me, what's the council's pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a few comments. When I was elected to office 24 years ago, I had a vision for Ward 4. I knew the Southeast was going to become the economic growth corridor for the city of Tucson, and I'm proud to say that through hard work, it has now designated as such in the voter-approved Plan Tucson, Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, and the Houghton Area Master Plan. 20 years ago, I started lobbying the federal government to put resources toward Houghton Road. They did, and now it is the largest RTA expansion project in the city of Tucson under construction with 6 lanes from Tanque Verde to I-10. In 2002, I brought all the stakeholders together to bring creating the Houghton Area Master Plan, including the environmentalists, Fantasy Island Mountain Biking Associations, community members, and the business and development groups. The Houghton Area Master Plan was adopted in 2005 and lays the foundation for the planned community development before us today, which is an infill and anti-sprawl plan. In recent years, the Arizona State Land Department has seen the progress the City of Tucson has made to increase the value of the state land along Houghton Road, enabling a higher return to the state land trustees, including K-12 education and our universities. With the help of Carrie Sylvan, the Arizona State Land Department put together a collaborative team working with the various stakeholders, neighborhoods, and mountain biking associations to create the planned community development. I am thrilled to have this plan before us. I want to give a sincere thank you to the representatives of the Arizona State Land Department for their commitment to Tucson and the countless miles going back and forth from Phoenix to Tucson to meet with us and the community. Arizona State Land Department, the city, and the Billboard Review Committee worked together the past few weeks to appropriately acknowledge the 3 existing billboards and the fact that one of the billboards is subject to the settlement agreement with Clear Channel and requires removal by May 17th of 2020. The Arizona State Land Department has also agreed to revoke the special land use permits and permit the city a right of entry to remove the other 2 billboards as a condition of this rezoning to planned community development. This permits the city to have those additional billboards removed within 3 years of the effective date of this PCD. And for the IGA, the city is hopeful the county will participate in the IGA to deal with infrastructure planning in the area, and this language encourages the county to participate but allows the city to move forward with the Arizona State Land Department to grow this infill area that has been planned for future growth since 2005 as part of the Houghton Area Master Plan. And with that, I would move to approve ordinance number 11711 with the following, with the changes that the City Attorney Mike Rankin has already stated.
Get a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Any discussion on this matter? Start with Councilmember Cunningham.
Couple things. For the record, does this affect any of the mountain bike Fantasy Island trails?
Mayor, Councilmember Cunningham, it does in a positive way. A lot of the work that we did on this PCD was Development Area 1. There's 15 development areas. Development Area 1 is the portion of Fantasy Island that is just south of Irvington Road. It's 208 acres. In working with the Fantasy Island folks, many of you know from back in 2005, that area they've been operating with a permit just to be on state land, but haven't really had the appropriate permission. What we're doing in this PCD is we are solidifying that 208 acres as open space for mountain biking trail, and we have the same language in there that we put in the Saguaro Trails PAD when the City of Tucson worked on that project. So that's another 150 acres of Fantasy Island. So if we go back in time to 2006, when the Fantasy Island Master Plan was created, they really had no right to be on any of that land from a permit standpoint and an ability to operate it as a park. And we're now solidifying over 300 acres. They were all at the zoning examiner hearing, very happy. We've met with their leadership a number of times. I think they're already working with the City of Tucson on the similar cooperative agreement where they're going to be maintaining, and it will be a city park. So that's all in this PCD.
Does it have to be a city park? Can we designate it as a state park? Is that possible? Mr. Dennis?
I don't know if that's Mr. Ortega, Mr. Rankin.
Because it's coming from state trust land, I'm just asking, because then we're footing the bill for the park, where we could ask the state to foot the bill. I mean, here's my thing. Phoenix has like 7 state parks in their municipality. We have, what, 2?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cunningham, what exactly would be the request of the state?
They could maintain Fantasy Island as a park. I mean, we're happy to maintain it too, but we could ask them. I mean, if they could effectively manage it better than we could, or they had more financial resources to manage it, I think that's a discussion worth having.
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Cunningham, the conversation, I think, would be a state parks discussion. We can certainly have that. State land has very minuscule resources here locally, and so the management of that area would probably not be something they could take on. I can't speak for them. They're obviously here. They can talk through that. If that's something that council would like to pursue, we hadn't pursued that, we can certainly have that discussion.
This is my second part is about the Atterbury Wash. Are we able in the pads to ensure that the grading to the Atterbury Wash continues to be fed with water so that the wash trail remains healthy?
Mayor, Councilmember Cunningham, I want to go back to the park for just a minute. My understanding is that there's 3 or 4 mountain biking associations that have an official agreement with City of Tucson Parks Department to actually be responsible for maintaining the existing trails on the portion that's in Saguaro Trails. They are expanding that, so they are taking the financial and the other responsibilities as they have in the past for maintaining it. It just becomes the city park, which is what was envisioned as part of the Fantasy Island park document that was adopted by this council back in 2006.
Yeah, all right, even better.
It doesn't preclude further discussions, but I just wanted I wanted to provide that background.
I've never heard you, well, I've maybe upon occasion misspeak before, but the agreements that we've had, it's the same one we have out at the 100 Acre Wood by DM, is that the private mountain bike associations take on those responsibilities. It becomes a city park, but we have agreements with them that they will maintain, and we just watch.
I'm very good with that. Basically, the whole point of my question was to try to get more money from the state. So
I did that on purpose so that the mayor was able to correct me at his last meeting.
Thank you, Karen.
Anytime.
So the second part is, so the whole biking, look, I just want to be sure that we're ensuring that the mountain biking feature is there, which it is.
Yeah.
And I want to also say, hey, we should ask the state for money for it. I don't really want them to manage it necessarily. I just want money from them. The second piece is I want to talk about grading on the future projects so that Atterbury Wash's washscape and its health is maintained.
So the Houghton Area Master Plan is very clear, and we are carrying that forward, that the Atterbury Wash and all of the tributaries to the Atterbury Wash, as well as the Pantano Wash, and there's a couple of other ones within the overall 10,000 acres that is encompassed in the HAMP. For this 2,500 acres, it's the Atterbury and the tributaries. Those are the open space system within the PCD. They are to be maintained. All of the maps within the PCD acknowledge those. They are a combination of the natural open space, the riparian areas. They're also, the edges of them are the trail connectivity that needs to occur, which also is going to connect with Fantasy Island for the folks who want to mountain bike, as well as the loop, the Harrison Greenway, and then the Houghton connectivity trail. So the Atterbury Wash and its tributaries are all identified in the PCD as areas that are to be remain natural.
According to the map, I'm under the impression, according to the map overlaid on the satellite, that the PAD is not going west of Harrison. If you're north of Valencia, it's not going west of Harrison.
If you're
East,
going,
yeah, west of Harrison.
It's
East of
the Harrison Road alignment is the western boundary of the PCD.
Very good. Okay. So the second piece is that for everything west of Harrison Road, is that still state trust land or is that federal land?
The area that's in the PCD is all
outside of the PCD.
On the west side of Harrison is the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how we can make that into like a natural preserve at Atterbury Wash forever. So that's kind of one of the pieces I want to go as we move forward on this. The next thing I do is I want to talk about, I really want to talk about this 14,000 acre feet of water business. Can we, because we're doing this, we're taking this 2,844 acres, can we go to the state after the fact and say, hey, look, state, we're doing your highest and best use here, but why don't you deliver what's entitled to us? And I kind of want to be very aggressive about that piece of this.
Mr. Ortega, Mr. Rankin, we've had these discussions over a number of years.
Mr. Mayor, I think the bottom line is that if your thought is that we would go back after the fact, that would be difficult. If you want to have that discussion, we need to have that now before you approve anything going forward. Otherwise, what's the incentive or what's the hammer, if you will, to have the discussion? And I think that if there is an interest on the part of the council to pursue those kinds of conversations on a bigger scale, up to and including the Fantasy Island piece, we can certainly have that discussion, but we need to have that ahead of time.
I have a different opinion, as Mr. Rankin knows. I think we're entitled. And I think that through the continued discussions, I'm looking at what the plans are here, and approval of this tonight, all that does is allow the state to go to auction. Thereafter, I'm seeing at least 7 steps that people have to go through. I'm about to go back into private practice, so maybe Mr. Rankin and I will have that conversation about state land. I'm relatively convinced.
So at any point during the zoning process or the building process, as the development process unfolds over the next 5 years, we'll have another bite at the apple, is what the mayor's telling me, that we'll have another bite at the apple to say, hey, we're not going to do this unless we get our allotment. And I actually agree with that. I totally understand. So I'm now comfortable with this motion.
Mayor, members of the council, I just want to point out in the actual PCD that IGA, the intergovernmental agreement, is the next step, and state land cannot move forward with any sale of land pursuant to the zoning entitlements, which is all that's happening tonight, until that infrastructure is taken care of and water is particularly called out. The discussion about that 14 acre feet is a different department at the State Land Department, but they will be involved. The infrastructure discussion will happen as part of that IGA, and as I said, it very clearly states that no land is going to be auctioned until that IGA is in front of you, and that's the very first step.
Well, I want to put it on record now that if anybody comes for a rezoning, I'm going to be very hesitant unless we know we're getting our 14,000 acre feet.
And it sounds like the first conversation can occur, assuming we approve this tonight, because then we go to the IGA conversation, and that has been on the top of my agenda for years.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's important you're having this conversation right now, because that IGA will be the opportunity point to resolve that situation, because as Ms. Sylvan was pointing out, under the language that was just read into the record, the dispositions of land by ASLD under the PCD can't occur until that IGA is successfully executed.
No, it looks like the PCD is pretty well thought out. It protects the mountain bikes. It protects the washway. It also hopefully leads to a step preserving the washway forever. And it also moves us a step closer to leveraging our opportunity to get to 14,000 acre feet. So I'm now where I needed to be on this item, so thank you.
All right, anybody else on this? Councilman Kozaczek.
So all things being equal, you've done a really good job of laying out a nice planned development concept, preserving the bike trails and all that. But this is and will continue, to be a desert, and our water challenges are not going to diminish. Preserving 20% of the 2,500 acres for open space. If this were a mile to the east, this would be out in the county and be subject to the Snow and Desert Conservation Plan, in which those numbers would be flipped. You'd be preserving 80% and building on 20%. So all things really aren't equal. again, as I said, when Linda was up there, you know, we have to at some point be taking a longer-term perspective on these things. I'm not comfortable saying to the state, we'll punt again on this and let you come back and have this conversation when we do the IGA, because each time we take an incremental step forward, we do just that. We take another incremental step forward and we lock ourselves into to certain levels of density, certain levels of development. Carrie, the zoning examiner, you said the existing zoning does not align with the way we really want to do growth in this community. And that assumes the densities that you're proposing, but right now it's the, you know, people have bought out in that area at SR or RX1, 1 for 3 acres. So I think that that comment is subject obviously to debate or discussion. Can you explain in a little more detail the water conservation commitments that are being drawn into this PCD, short of getting our 14,000 acre feet, which to me is a real issue, that, you know, what else is happening within this PCD, because I suspect it's going to pass, but I want that stuff on the record for people to hear.
Sure. I want to address that.
And while you're doing it, explain how the zoning bank assures water conservation. There's a zoning bank in the PCD.
Sure. The first thing I want to touch on is my statement at the zoning examiner hearing. So in 2005, the mayor and council adopted the Houghton Area Master Plan, which is in compliance with the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan. And while you're correct that as you go further out, there are designations, the SDCP specifically designates this area as a growth area. So in doing both the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan and us as a region planning for our growth, including this council when it comes to the Ward 4 land area, the HAMP really identified how we want to grow. And it's a sustainable plan in the sense that it encourages this area as a targeted growth area to really work on the infrastructure, work on the water issues, work on the sewer issues. The roads have all been, many of them have been improved as part of this master planning, and so this is a targeted area with the need to still preserve the open space and create those kinds of opportunities. So when I made that statement at the zoning examiner, what I was acknowledging were there are a number of residents out in the area who have said we want to grow the way they worked on the HAMP, and they want to grow that way, and this land is currently zoned. Some of it is the low-density residential. There's a very large chunk that's I-2 that's directly across from the Desert Willow Estates, and there was a lot of concern that they wanted to bring forward the Houghton Area Master Plan, which is the comprehensive plan for the area plan for the area. The current zoning doesn't do that, so that was the connection. I wasn't comparing it necessarily to existing zoning, but to the policies for growth that we've adopted as a community. On the water, this is, as we all know, that this is a 2,500 acre area, so it's going to be developed over a number of years. The Houghton Area Master Plan requires that there be discussions about sustainable, but specifically calling out energy and water as the kinds of things that need to be focused on. What we know today about best practices on energy and water, we didn't know sometimes 5, 10, 15 years ago. So what we've done in this PCD is we've adopted language that acknowledges when those development area implementation plans come in, that there are whatever the best practices are for sustainable development, including best practices in energy and water conservation for both commercial and residential, be incorporated in those plans. We didn't want to dictate what those were today because, as I said before, they change over time. We've also indicated in the PCD that the existing, whatever the policies are at the time, so as you all adopt more sustainable policies over time, those will be applied to the development as this moves forward. The zoning bank term has more to do with the uses and how the zoning is actually established when we go into those development area implementation plans. So The zoning, let me back up. There's 15 development areas. Development area 1 is off the table. That's Fantasy Island. It solidifies Fantasy Island. The rest of those development areas, as state land decides to auction a piece of land, it may be the entire development area, it may be a portion of that development area. In this whole process, I'm leaving the IGA aside because they can't do any of this until we do the IGA. Assuming we get there on the IGA, then they decide to auction. They will be coordinating with the city of Tucson on that. Development area, the auction occurs, it's, let's say, a portion of development area 6. That developer is going to be working with the city of Tucson and with the state and a design review committee that we've established that includes the neighborhoods, it includes some professionals, it includes the city, it includes the county, it includes the school district, to sit down and go through and figure out exactly where the uses are going to be going and how those transitions are going to take place, and that's exactly where those sustainability principles need to be incorporated. That plan then gets processed through the city's process that's similar to a PAD process. So all of that is happening before there's any development on the site. So the water, I tried to embed my answer in there. The water and the energy conservation is very much in there. And in the PCD, the draft of the PCD that you have in front of you, we specifically added that sustainability language that I just read in response to a council member request that be included.
So and that's a good answer, but similarly, we're locking in long-term entitlements. We aren't pumping excess groundwater right now because of the CAP. At some point, there will be a shortage declared on the river, and that's just going to happen. And at that point, when that occurs, our ability to get credits is going to change. The whole notion of our obligating ourselves beyond our long-term ability to serve is a concern to me. And so when we're talking about locking in long-term zoning entitlements, with densities that exceed what are out there now, that's a concern to me. And you say that the HAMP was built with sustainability in mind, and yet we've learned things in the last 10 or 15 years. One of the things we've learned is that we just went through a hell of a series of negotiations to get a drought contingency plan that 10 or 15 years ago we had no idea we would need. And that really speaks to the concern that I've got about this, and then relying on the good faith of our ability to negotiate successfully an IGA, that we get our 14,000 out of them, and going forward, these are, again, this is a larger conversation perhaps than simply this planned community development. No one's got that crystal ball, and we didn't have it 15 years ago to get to this point today when HAMP was negotiated. I don't know what our water situation is going to be 15 or 20 or 30 years from now, but we have to at some point in this community start looking at that really longer term perspective before we start locking in entitlements. That's, I guess, summarizes my concern.
Mr. Mayor.
Romero.
I understand the hesitation of my colleague, Councilmember Kasachik. But is there an ability for, say, we start moving immediately, approve this tonight, PCD tonight, and start negotiating the IGA? Is there an ability to include in that IGA, maybe this question is for our city attorney, is for us to be able to, as the city of Tucson, based on water usage and needs, to be able to reevaluate the continued build out of the 2,500 acres?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Romero, there won't be the ability to sort of reconsider the approval of the PCD, right? So to the extent build out could occur under the entitlements authorized under the PCD, no, we wouldn't be able to go back on that. But I think we're hearing pretty clearly about the expectation of the mayor and council about one of the things that needs to be in that IGA with respect to.
I think clearly we can get that in the IGA. I mean, that's just kind of basic law. I know there's some people up in Phoenix that don't believe they're in assured water supplies, but I don't think there's anybody south of the Gila that doesn't believe that. So that's pretty simple to get in an IGA. If it isn't, then that's going to change things. But as I look through each of these steps along the way, if at a certain point somebody brings a development and our water department saying, you know what, we don't have it out here anymore, this council is not going to go forward with that development. You know, so I think it's important that we try to. I mean, the 14,000 feet is always stuck in my craw, I can tell you, for a few years. But I think we can also deal with that other issue as well, and now would be a good time to do it. I mean, this is a significant project for the city of Tucson, and I think that they've done a really good job on it, and if we can strengthen it just a little in the additional process, we need to do it. Councilman Cunningham.
And Your Honor, that was my point in the previous comments. The bottom line is that we can still go out and get our 14,000 feet. We can still say to the development community, hey, we appreciate you coming forward, but you need to help us put some pressure on the state to get. I mean, we're going to have 3 or 4 by the apple. There's 7 other processes, as you stated, that people are going to go through. So it's not like all is lost by doing this. The bottom line is that that gap that exists from basically Rita Ranch south of Valencia all the way up to Irvington has been there on the east side forever. That wide open space, there's no connectivity, there's no pedestrian connectivity to that community. This is a big piece of infill for us, and if we don't do this, then it gets built out again. It gets built out near Colossal Cave Road. It gets built out in out-county areas where they may get permitted to dig for wells. That's way worse than using TEP in its water service area to provide homes. So I think there's a win. There was also some discussion about the infrastructure. Again, anything that gets built is going to have to go through all of the impact fee process, is going to have to go through all of the infill process as far as road widening, as far as building out any development whenever we did that. But this is how cities grow. And again, it's not like we're skipping an area to build out in the boonies. We're building in a spot that is surrounded on 2 sides, and in some cases 3 sides, by high-density SFR development. So I'd say that we're going to. I'm confident we're going to have our chances to get the 14,000 acre feet. I'm happy with the Fantasy Island provisions as is, though I would like to get some state money. That'd be great. And then, of course, the last piece is, and this is probably the biggest, most significant piece of it. Long term, we've got to ensure that the Atterbury wash piece is healthy. That healthy wash is going to be a big part of why this community is going to be successful. And for all the doomsdayers on the water thing, we've watched our water table grow every year since I've been on the council, believe it or not, because we've figured out how to recharge water, because we've figured out how to finagle extra water from the Colorado River, because we've distributed water in a better way, because we've got one of the top water people in the country, Tim Tomier. Because we've done these things right, we've watched that water table rise. I'm of the belief that sooner or later we're going to be the oasis of the desert with a few healthy streams that are operating 30, 40 days a year. And if we can continue to do this, that's why the Atterbury Wash is so important to me. So with that, I'd like to call the question and see if we can go make a vote.
There's still some additional questions and comments.
Well, you know, I hope you're a better parliamentarian than I am.
Well, I'd like to add, Mr. Mayor, I would like to echo the sentiment that Councilmember Cunningham has. Those are the areas, the major areas where I was concerned about sustainability and being able to embed into this PCD the sustainability practices and the open space and how we treat our washes in the area. So that's why I had requested additional language in terms of sustainability be included in all of this, because we want to make sure that we don't tie our hands with the current practices that we have, but that any additional sustainability sustainability practices as we build will be included in the PCD. And so I just wanted to request that you add some of that language tonight into the record so that we we can rest assured that there's additional protection moving forward after tonight.
Okay. Can you point out, I think that language is in, but can you point it out where it is in the record?
It is. It's in the current draft of the PCD under the design guidelines and urban design. It's in section 3. I don't have the exact number. And it specifically says sustainable development principles, including best practices in energy and water conservation for commercial and/or residential development as one of the lists. And then it actually references back the HAMP policies related to energy and water conservation.
And the HAMP policies, Mr. Mayor, are the following of our, it includes within the HAMP a variety of housing types and densities which offer both affordability and livability, a mix of uses and compact development patterns, which integrates places for people to live, work, shop, and play in a cohesive system of neighborhoods, transportation and circulation system that offers residents alternatives for mobility, giving high priority to pedestrian, bicycle, and transit modes, a regional open space system that preserves washes and environmentally sensitive areas as passive open space amenities, and active recreational opportunities such as trails and developed parks, and long-term phased approach to development in order to provide for increased efficiency and infrastructure for the residents. And so those policies are embedded into the future development of the area. And as I see the map as to where this area is going to, it really is infill development inside the city of Tucson. And in 3 areas, as we look at the map, is high density development adjacent to this land. I too agree that preserving Fantasy Island is very, very important. It's something that we all wanted here, and I know that Councilmember Scott worked really hard to make sure that was part of it. And I also wanted to make sure how we are treating our washes in the area, because they're very, very important to the wild spaces that are still available in the area, and moves water flow in the area, which helps, by the way, to preserve that water table in the area as well. And so I agree with Councilmember Cunningham that it is important that we have this conversation, and that as we move forward, there are still areas where we could, for example, add the additional 14,000 acre-feet of water that we need for continued growth, and for making sure that the residents of the area and the city of Tucson have that water availability for the future. And so I really wanted to talk about process, but I know that if you wanted to add a couple of words in terms of how we reached out to residents in the area, I know that we mailed more than 44,000 letters to residents in the area. I know that there have been years worth of work in communicating with the residents in the area as well. But I am, at this point, I'm really content with where we are. And I agree that if we don't move in this direction and don't solidify how we want to grow in this area, there will be areas outside of the city of Tucson that we cannot control, and that will affect our water table in the future and how our washes are treated, et cetera. And so I'm very happy with all of the work done by Councilmember Scott and Kerry and the state land department as well. So then now we could do roll call. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor.
Oh, she's still 2 or 3 items away. All right, and as I'm reading this, we've got a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, it is roll call.
Mr. Durham.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Mayor Rothschild.
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek.
No.
Mrs. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Romero?
Aye.
Ordinance 11711 passes by a vote of 5-1. Let's move on then to item 10.
Economic Development authorizing a GPLET lease agreement for 127 South Fifth Avenue. Report from City Manager, Resolution number 23119.
City Manager's communication number 392, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you are requested to read Resolution 23119 by number and title only.
Resolution number 23119 relating to economic development incentives and real property, authorizing and approving the government property lease excise tax lease agreement between the City of Tucson and Fifth Avenue Partners OF LLC of the Apartment Development Project for the Apartment Development Project located at 127 South Fifth Avenue.
What's the council's pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, the financial benefits exceed the value of the GPLET, and I would thank the partners on Fourth for signing the CBA, and with that, I'd move that we approve the GPLET.
Great. We've got a motion and a second.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this matter?
I just had a question about this, the CBA, Councilmember Kozachik. I don't know the details.
The HVAC, the Historic Fourth Avenue Coalition, worked hard with the developers on this and did sign a community benefits agreement. It has 8 or 10 different components to it. I don't have them in my head, but the HVAC group was pleased with what they came out with.
That's great.
And used that as an example of what they had hoped to come out with the other one.
That's wonderful to hear. I know that this property is on the streetcar line, and I highly encourage the developer and the owner of the property to think about transit packages, because it really is on the streetcar line. So both for residents and employees of the development, the more we use our transit system and put packages together for these types of development, the better.
No.
Oh, okay. And so I'd just like to congratulate the work put into this project and looking forward to it. And again, I encourage the use. This is really a transit-oriented development. It's right beside the streetcar line, and I am looking forward to additional passengers, not just in the streetcar, but in our bus system, which will be a hop and a skip over to the Ronstadt Transit Center to use other modes of mobility. And so congratulations, I'm looking forward to it, and more than happy to vote in approval of this project.
All right, then let's go to roll call.
Mr. Kozachik?
Aye.
Ms. Romero?
Aye.
Mayor Rothschild?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Ross, good job.
Mrs. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Durham?
Aye.
Resolution 23119 passes by a vote of 6-0. Thank you. Let's move to item 11.
Economic Development, approval of GPLET lease agreement and site-specific sale tax incentive development agreement with Pueblo Center Partners LLP and HSL Circle Properties Limited Partnership LLP for 181 West Broadway. Report from City Manager, Resolution number 23120.
City Manager's communication number 393, dated November 19, is received into and made part of the record. Mr. Clerk, you're requested to read Resolution 23120 by number and title only.
Resolution number 23120 relating to economic development incentives and real property, authorizing and approving the government property lease excise tax lease agreement and site-specific sales tax incentive development agreement between the City of Tucson and Pueblo Center Partners LLP and HSL Circle Properties Limited Partnership LLP for the renovation of an existing hotel located at 181 West Broadway into a Hyatt Regency Hotel.
What's the council's pleasure? Councilman Kozachik?
Yeah, this is great to see the property finally activated again. It's going to really give the community a chance to capitalize on the $65 million in upgrades to the TCC. We now have 3 or 4, maybe 5 hotels going in the downtown core that are at different price points with different brands, and so this is really going to be a positive for the downtown core generally. So I'd move the incentive package.
Get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Here.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Omar, well done. You know, we've been talking about this for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
8 years.
But the big one was that every single time you'd come in on a different project or something else, we'd bring this up, and to have it come to fruition means a lot to this community. So thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to also add, well done. I think we've worked on it longer than 8 years, but I think this is an important corner for downtown, and I'm really happy that we finally have it in front of us. I would add the same thing. This is a project that is on the streetcar line. I see that at the end of the development, there's going to be more than 200 employees on site, and so I would highly encourage that you participate in our Transit Pass program that the City of Tucson provides. It is something that really will encourage the continued transit-oriented development vision that we've set for our city. I appreciate the continued investment from HSL into the City of Tucson, and look forward to seeing a very successful project in front of us in the next couple of years. So good job, and hopefully we continue working together. Getting you those passes are important. And then, of course, the continued investment of the surrounding areas, including the TCC, is going to be important for all of us. So thank you, Ahmad, and good job.
Roll call.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mrs. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Kozaczek? Ms. Romero?
Aye.
Mayor Rothschild?
Aye.
Mr. Durham?
Aye.
Resolution 23120 passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 12.
Adjournment.
Council will stand adjourned. Next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, December 3rd at 5:30 p.m. right here.